Nature is breathtaking, but it's also brutal. The great outdoors can be a playground for adventure seekers, but when things go wrong, they go really wrong. From daring explorers pushing the limits to unsuspecting hikers caught in freak accidents, some outdoor adventures have ended in absolute tragedy. These aren't just unfortunate mishaps. These are some of the most horrifying, gut-wrenching deaths in outdoor history. Buckle up, because these stories will make you think twice before venturing too far from civilization. On July 3, 2018, Aaron Gibbons set out on what should have been a peaceful family trip, a day of tradition, bonding, and quiet survival in the vast Arctic wilderness. But by nightfall, he would become a legend, a father who made the ultimate sacrifice in the face of one of nature's most terrifying predators. Aaron, 31, was no stranger to the wild. Born and raised in Arviat, Nunavut, he belonged to a people who had spent generations coexisting with the brutal forces of nature. Though he worked in a gold mine, his heart remained tied to his community's hunting traditions. On that fateful day, he took his children to Sentry Island, a remote Arctic outpost with windswept beaches and an abundance of wildlife. It was a chance to teach them the ways of their ancestors, to show them how to gather Arctic tern eggs, to respect the land, and to embrace the unforgiving beauty of the North. But nature doesn't follow a script. As the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the tundra, Aaron caught sight of something massive, something pale, something moving, a polar bear. At first, it was just a shape in the distance, blending into the barren landscape. Then it moved again, and this time it was coming straight for them. Everything changed in an instant. Aaron's instincts kicked in before fear could take hold. The bear was closing in, fast. He shouted for his children to run, his voice sharp, urgent, leaving no room for hesitation. They sprinted for the boat, scrambling over the rough terrain, their hearts hammering. But Aaron, he didn't run. He couldn't. He planted his feet and turned to face the beast. He knew what had to be done. This was no ordinary bear encounter. There was no time to scare it away, no time to grab a weapon. The predator was already locked onto its prey, and Aaron was the only thing standing between it and his children. The attack was brutal, a desperate struggle of flesh against claws, of a father's unbreakable love against one of nature's deadliest hunters. His children, safe aboard the boat, could only watch in horror as their father fought for his life, his final moments filled with sheer, unrelenting courage. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Aaron had given everything. The bear was eventually killed, but the damage had been done. The man who had once stood as a protector of his people, a skilled hunter, a devoted father, was gone. His body, torn and bloodied, was a devastating reminder of the dangers lurking in the Arctic wilderness. In Arviat, grief turned into outrage. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was part of a growing problem. Polar bears were getting bolder, venturing closer to human settlements. Some blamed climate change for forcing the bears further inland, while others pointed to Churchill, Manitoba, a nearby town famous for polar bear tourism. Had these guided tours, where people walked among the bears, desensitized the animals to humans? Had they lost their fear, turning them into silent stalkers of the North? Aaron's uncle, Gordy Kidpick, a respected elder, spoke out. He warned that if changes weren't made, more families would suffer, more lives would be lost. But even amid the anger, one truth remained undeniable. Aaron Gibbons had died a hero. His bravery was later recognized with Canada's Star of Courage, an honor for those who display extraordinary valor in the face of death, but no medal could bring him back. What he left behind was more than just sorrow. It was a legacy of selflessness, of love, of a father's instinct to protect at all costs, and it was a warning, a chilling reminder that in the battle between man and nature, nature never fights fair. In May 1996, what should have been a peaceful hiking trip through Virginia's Shenandoah National Park turned into a nightmare, one so chilling that it would haunt the region for decades. Julie Williams, 24, and her partner Laura "Loie" Winans, 26, set out on an adventure, unaware that something, or someone, was lurking in the wilderness, waiting to turn their dream getaway into a scene of unimaginable horror. The couple, both passionate nature lovers, had come to Shenandoah for a much-needed retreat. Julie was preparing to start a new job in Vermont on June 1st, a fresh chapter in her life. Instead, that date would mark the horrifying end of a frantic search, one that uncovered a crime so brutal it left even seasoned investigators shaken. Julie and Loie entered the park on May 19th, accompanied by their golden retriever, Taj. They followed the White Canyon Trail, but heavy rain forced them to change their route. They registered for additional permits and were last seen on May 24th, when a park ranger gave them a ride. Their final campsite lay near a secluded stream off the Appalachian Trail, just a short distance from the popular Skyland Lodge. It seemed safe, but safety, they would soon learn, was an illusion. For days, no one realized anything was wrong. Then, on May 31st, Julie's father, Thomas Williams, grew uneasy. His daughter should have called about her new job. When she didn't, he reported her missing. Park rangers quickly located Julie and Loie's car near Skyland Lodge, but something was off. The couple was nowhere in sight. Then, a chilling clue, Taj, their dog, was found wandering alone, confused and distressed. Something had happened. Something terrible. The next day, searchers pushed deeper into the wilderness, and that's when they found it. The campsite was eerily silent, but as they moved closer, the truth revealed itself, a scene so gruesome it would stay with them forever. Julie and Loie's bodies lay close together, bound and gagged, their final moments marked by sheer terror. They had suffered. The brutality of the attack spoke of calculated evil, of a predator who had stalked them in the night. Investigators descended on the scene, but the remote location and lack of evidence made the case daunting. They searched for answers, piecing together the couple's last days. A recovered camera showed their joy-filled adventure up until May 24th, the last day they were seen alive. Then, darkness swallowed their story. The investigation led authorities to a man named Daryl David Rice. He had a disturbing history, a documented hatred for women, and had been spotted in Shenandoah around the time of the murders. Restraints were found in his vehicle. He had even made chilling remarks about Julie and Loie's relationship. Prosecutors believed they had their man. But then, in 2003, everything collapsed. DNA from the crime scene didn't match Rice. It didn't match the victims either. The case, once seemingly airtight, fell apart in an instant. The real killer was still out there. For nearly 3 decades, Julie and Loie's families lived in torment, haunted by the unanswered questions. Who had been watching them? Who had crept into their campsite that night, tying them up, silencing their screams and snuffing out their young lives? Then, in 2024, science finally caught up to the truth. A breakthrough in DNA technology led investigators to a new name, Walter Leo Jackson. A convicted serial molester, Jackson had a history of brutal attacks, but he would never face justice for what he did to Julie and Loie. He had died in prison in 2018. The discovery was bittersweet. The families had answers, but no justice. The true monster had been hiding in plain sight all along, and the chilling question remains: how many others did he leave behind in the darkness? The Carpathian Mountains, rugged, breathtaking, and untamed. For 19-year-old Maria Diana, this remote wilderness was meant to be an escape, a well-earned reward after the grueling months of high school exams. But as she set off on that July day in 2024, she had no idea she was walking straight into a nightmare. Maria had always loved the mountains, the crisp air, the endless greenery, the thrill of adventure. It called to her. That summer, she decided to explore the Yepi May Trail near Brasov with her boyfriend, eager to see the famed Spumwassa waterfall. But not everyone shared her enthusiasm. Her pregnant mother begged her not to go, her warnings heavy with unease. "Be careful," her mother had urged. "These mountains are dangerous." Maria had just smiled. "Nothing bad will happen." She was wrong. At first, the hike was peaceful. The two moved along the winding trail, surrounded by towering trees and the distant murmur of the waterfall. But deep in the wilderness, they were not alone. A shadow moved in the undergrowth. Something was watching them. Then, a snapping branch. A low, guttural growl. The brown bear emerged, massive and relentless. It locked eyes on Maria and her boyfriend, its powerful body tense, its breath heavy. And then, it charged. Panic took over. Maria and her boyfriend scrambled, trying to call for help as the beast closed in. Maria managed to dial emergency services, her voice trembling as she described the horror unfolding before her. "It's coming. Please, please hurry." Her boyfriend called too, but no one could reach them in time. Then, a scream. The bear struck with brutal force, its claws tearing into Maria's leg. She fought, but the beast was too strong, too fast. It dragged her from the path, pulling her toward the trees. Her boyfriend, helpless, could only watch in horror. Maria's screams filled the forest as the bear's powerful jaws clamped down. Then, with a final, violent shake, it threw her over the edge. She plummeted 400 feet down a steep cliff. The silence that followed was deafening. When the Salvamont Prahova rescue team arrived, they found the bear still there, prowling around Maria's lifeless body. It had tasted blood, and it wasn't finished. Rescuers had no choice. A gunshot rang out. The bear collapsed, but the damage was done. Maria lay broken at the base of the cliff, her body covered in claw marks, deep bites, evidence of the brutal attack. There had been no chance of survival. Maria's death sent shockwaves through Romania. Her boyfriend, shaken beyond words, struggled with unbearable guilt. "I should have done more," he told reporters. "It should have been me." Even experienced rescuers were shaken. Dan Banu, the head of the response team, described it as one of the most horrifying attacks he had seen in over a decade. The tragedy sparked a national debate. Romania, home to Europe's largest brown bear population outside Russia, had seen a rise in bear encounters. The government reacted swiftly, approving a controversial measure to cull nearly 500 bears. But was it the right answer? Environmentalists argued that human expansion and irresponsible tourism were pushing bears closer to people. Killing them, they warned, wouldn't solve the deeper problem. Maria Diana's story is more than just a tragedy. It's a warning. The wilderness is beautiful. It is breathtaking. But above all, it is wild. And in the wild, we are never truly in control. In April 2002, Carolyn Stuttle, a kind-hearted and ambitious 19-year-old from York, England, was nearing the end of her gap-year adventure in Australia. Traveling with her close friend, Sarah Holliday, Caroline had spent months exploring the country's iconic landmarks. Their journey was almost complete, with Bundaberg, a quiet town in Queensland, being one of their final stops before heading home. But Caroline would never return to her family. Like countless young travelers, she had worked hard to save for her trip, taking shifts at Pizza Hut and making detailed plans for the adventure of a lifetime before starting her studies in criminal psychology. She dreamed of helping others, eager to begin the next chapter of her life. On April 10, 2002, Caroline stepped out alone to make a phone call to her boyfriend in England. As she walked back to her caravan park, her path crossed with Ian Privet, a 32-year-old drifter and drug addict. Desperate for money to fuel his addiction, Privet's desperation turned violent. He spotted Caroline and attempted to snatch her handbag. She fought back, refusing to let go. Determined to get what he wanted, Privet's aggression escalated. He forced Caroline over the railing of the bridge they were standing on, sending her plummeting 32 feet to the ground below. The fall left her fatally injured, her life stolen for the trivial sum of £180, a meaningless amount in exchange for a bright future extinguished too soon. When police arrived, Caroline's body lay beneath the bridge, her belongings gone. News of her murder quickly spread, shattering her family's world and stunning the community back in York. Investigators pursued leads, but Privet remained unidentified and the case grew cold. Months later, an unexpected breakthrough emerged. While serving time for an unrelated crime, Privet reportedly confessed to Caroline's murder. His chilling admission gained credibility when authorities discovered a handwritten message scrawled on a bench near his hostel. "I threw the girl off the bridge. I am sorry." The confession gave police the break they needed, leading to Privet's arrest and trial in 2004. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the jury found him guilty. Judge Peter Doney sentenced him to life in prison, condemning his actions and the tragic loss of an innocent young woman. For Caroline's grieving family, the verdict provided some relief, but no true closure. Knowing Privet was behind bars could not erase the pain of her absence. Determined to honor her memory, Caroline's family founded Caroline's Rainbow Foundation, a charity dedicated to educating young travelers about safety and awareness while abroad. Her brother, Richard Stuttle, has continued the foundation's mission, ensuring Caroline's adventurous spirit and kindness live on through their work. However, in 2020, Privet was released from prison, reopening the wounds her loss had inflicted. Richard spoke out about the lifelong impact of Caroline's murder, stating that while Privet's life sentence ended, theirs would last forever. In March 1981, Carl McCann, a 35-year-old wildlife photographer, set out on what he believed would be a solitary yet fulfilling expedition into the heart of Alaska's Brooks Range. With a passion for capturing the raw beauty of the wilderness, he arrived fully equipped, carrying 500 rolls of film, 1,400 pounds of provisions, and multiple firearms, prepared for what he thought would be an unforgettable summer. But a critical oversight would seal his fate, leaving him trapped, alone, and helpless in the unforgiving Alaskan wild. McCann, originally from Texas, was no stranger to adventure. In 1976, he'd already spent 5 months alone in the Brooks Range, an experience that likely instilled in him a sense of confidence, perhaps too much confidence. This time, however, he made one fatal miscalculation. He believed he had arranged for a friend to pick him up at summer's end, but he never confirmed his return flight. Unbeknownst to him, the pilot he had paid for plane repairs had never actually been scheduled to bring him home. As spring gave way to summer, McCann documented his journey in meticulous detail. His diary began as an awe-filled account of the thriving wildlife around him. But by August, his entries started to reveal a slow, creeping dread. "I think I should have used more foresight about arranging my departure," he wrote, an early sign that he was beginning to realize the gravity of his mistake. As the days passed and the plane never arrived, McCann's situation became increasingly dire. His supplies dwindled, and with autumn approaching, nights grew colder. He tried to stretch his rations by hunting ducks and muskrats, and even drying caribou meat from a carcass he found. Yet, despite his resourcefulness, his isolation became his greatest enemy. In late August, a glimmer of hope appeared in the sky. A small plane circled above his camp. It was an Alaska State Trooper, spotting his remote campsite. But McCann, unaware of the life-or-death weight of his actions, waved his orange sleeping bag casually, unknowingly signaling, "All okay, do not wait." His only chance at rescue vanished into the sky. As fall tightened its grip, McCann's journal reflected his descent from determination to desperation. Hunting became nearly impossible, as wolves and foxes competed for the little game that remained. His frostbitten hands struggled with even the most basic tasks. The cold gnawed at him relentlessly, and hunger sapped his strength. His once detailed diary entries became short, frantic scribbles, his handwriting growing shaky and uneven. By November, with no food left and his body wasting away, the thought of trekking 75 miles to Fort Yukon became a fantasy rather than a plan. His writing turned to hopelessness, his words filled with the fear of being forgotten, lost forever in the vast, empty wilderness. Near Thanksgiving, McCann described crushing weakness, dizzy spells, and relentless chills. With the last of his fuel, he lit a final fire, scrawling a farewell message in his diary. He pinned his Alaska driver's license to his last note, leaving behind instructions for his undeveloped film and a humble prayer for forgiveness. Then, in the silence of the frozen wild, he ended his own life. On February 2, 1982, a month-long search, initiated by concerned friends, led Alaska State Troopers to his camp. His tent was buried under snow, its entrance sealed by the harsh winter. Inside, they found his lifeless, emaciated body, preserved by the cold. His diary, over 100 pages long, chronicled the slow, harrowing decline of a man once filled with wonder and determination, reduced to a soul consumed by solitude and despair. The coroner's inquest would later confirm what his last pages had already revealed. Carl McCon had perished, not from the cruelty of nature, but from the crushing weight of isolation, hunger, and the realization that rescue would never come.